Welcome to the Friday Five for October 21st, 2022. My name is Andrew Ayers. I'm a business law and estate planning attorney. I've got offices in Edina, Minnesota and New York City. Next week's actually going to be my first on-the-road version of the Friday Five, as I'm going to be out of the office at a conference, but I'm still going to try to find some time to shoot the Friday Five from my hotel room. But for today, let's look at 5 questions from this week that you may not have known the answers to. Number 1. Do I need a will if my ex-husband already has one? So the context for this question came up when I spoke to a woman who's been divorced, and they share custody of their children, and her ex-spouse has been trying to impart upon her the importance of getting an estate plan. And so her question was, well, as long as he has an estate plan and that takes care of our kids, we should be fine, right? The theory being that they wouldn't die at the same time, so that if something happened to him, she'd be around, or if something happened to her, he would be around. So, of course, it all depends. You're running a really big risk at that point that you don't die at about the same time as each other do, or that in this case, he dies first and then shortly thereafter she dies. So when he dies, we know things are protected. We have guardianship provisions for the children. We have a trust set up. But what are we going to do about the ex-wife? If she dies without a will and she's living with her new partner, how is everything going to be sorted out? And what's going to happen is somebody's going to have to come in, because there's no will, and go to the court and figure out guardianship for the children, because they have young children who are well under the age of 18, and then figure out how to manage the money for those children as well. So most of our discussion focused on the importance of getting an estate plan in place for her, so that she doesn't have to worry about that situation where he dies first and then we're looking at her and her lack of an estate plan, and if something happens to her, what's going to happen with her children. Number 2 was an interesting Minnesota question for this week, and a lot of my clients don't know this, but it's something you want to consider, and that is you can actually do a transfer on death deed for your car. That's right. The question was, can I do a transfer on death designation for my car? And in Minnesota, you can. If you go online to the Minnesota DMV website, you're looking for the application for transfer on death beneficiary. It's a simple form, just like all the other forms we fill out when it comes to our cars, but you can actually create a beneficiary designation for your automobile. This is something we haven't had before, but it's a really easy way to, just like a transfer on death deed for your house, we can do a transfer on death beneficiary designation for your vehicle and take one more thing out of the process that we have to worry about. Now, if you're doing this form, one thing you need to pay attention to is that if you are married, your spouse needs to sign off on the form as well. And both of your signatures need to be notarized. So this isn't something you can just do and send in. You'll need to make sure that you find a notary public and you're signing in the presence of a notary. Number 3, is it hard to file a doing business as, known as a DBA, or change the name of your company? Now, this came up in the context of a company that's pivoting and changing into a different industry, and they want to change the name of the company, and our discussion was whether or not it makes more sense to do a DBA or change the name of the company. So you can go either route. Ironically, in Minnesota, the difference in filing fees is a whopping $5. It's $55 to amend your name, it's $50 to file a doing business as. So in that case, it really isn't a difference in cost. It's just a question of which way would you like to go forward with your company. Some people would prefer to change the name of the company. Others would just like to keep the name and do a doing business as. In this client's situation, what he's also going to do is speak to his accountant and go over the accountant's role in all this, and if they have a preference as to which route we go. And this is important when you're working with professionals, to make sure that you're speaking to everybody and getting the input from them. Our role as an attorney is not to say no to these other professionals. Now, every now and then, we're going to have a reason for a certain answer, and your accountant may have a different reason, and a financial advisor may have a completely different reason. And the important part of this process is that you speak to each different professional and figure out why they have the position they have, so that you can make the informed decision. Just because your accountant and your attorney disagree doesn't mean that you can't do one or the other. It just means you need to understand why each of them has the position they have, and then you can make that informed decision. Number 4 this week, if you're running your business from home, are there any tips or tricks you need to know? And in this case, it was make sure to have insurance. So in this week's discussion, we were talking about someone who's running a home business and is actually keeping inventory. So it's a home shipping business. They ship things from their house. They're selling on various websites. And the question was, we have all this inventory in the house. Is there anything else we need to consider? And in this case, it was make sure you have insurance. So you're running this business out of your home. You're maintaining inventory. Talk to your insurance agent and make sure that all of that inventory is covered. Because what happens if you go away on vacation and someone breaks into your house and steals all of your inventory? Now, it's one thing if you're crocheting things and selling them on Etsy and we have 1 or 2 in progress projects. It's quite a different situation if you have a bunch of electronics or high priced goods that you're selling and they all get stolen while you're on vacation. You want to make sure you have insurance to cover that inventory that you're keeping in your home. Number 5 this week, what happens when your business partner embezzles from the company and leaves you with a lot of debt? So this goes back to when you're starting your company. If you're going to take on partners, if you're going to have co-owners, you need to understand who you're in business with. So in this situation, part of the problem was this gentleman had a business partner who had a very bad drug and alcohol problem. And what he found out after the fact is that his partner was using the business checking account to take money out to support his habits. He was buying drugs, buying alcohol. So sure enough, as he runs up the debt on the company can't afford to pay it all off. He ran up credit card debt. He drained the bank accounts. And now the question is, what do we do next? We have all these debts. Well, the problem is you're going to have to sort this out, and you need to know who you got in business with. And for this gentleman, suing his business partner is an option. However, his business partner has no assets. He's addicted to a drug. He's an alcoholic. There's nothing left. He's been stealing from the business. So you can bring that lawsuit. But if that person has no assets, then what are you going to do? And in this case, it was further complicated by the fact that this other business partner had signed on for a bunch of other debts that have now been defaulted upon. And that default applies to the business. So now the business is also being sued and has to deal with these lawsuits in court. Now, in that situation, remember that a business cannot represent itself in court. The business is going to have to hire an attorney. So in this case, not only are you dealing with all of these debts, we're dealing with problems with an addict stealing money from the business, and now we're being sued and we have to hire an attorney. It is not an enviable place for any business to be in. The problem that this particular client is dealing with is personally signed guarantees for these debts. So as these companies are coming after them for these debts that the partner incurred, their assets are personally on the line too, because there was personal guarantees attached to these various debts. So if you had a time machine, you'd go back and say, wait a second, do I really want to be in business with this person? If you're starting a business, if you're going to have co-owners, 99% of the time, none of this stuff happens. However, there is always that 1% chance. And you want to make sure you understand who you're in business with and what your exposure is when you're dealing with these kinds of debts. We, of course, could go deeper into all of these questions if we had more time. They come from various consultations and meetings this week that lasted a lot longer than a short YouTube video. If you'd like to submit a question for future episodes, there'll be a link in the description of the video where you can go and watch old episodes and also submit questions. If you're in Minnesota and you have kids, I hope you enjoy your MEA break. It should be a nice long weekend for you. For everybody else and those on MEA break as well, I hope you have a great weekend.